Welcome to the From Concealment Podcast, the show for firearm enthusiasts who like to shoot, train, carry, and compete. Get ready for some shooting and sight, firearm and accessory reviews, and of course, insight on concealed carry. And now, broadcasting from behind enemy lines in the From Concealment studio, it's Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams.
Hey, Freedom Nation, this is Pete Mitchell.
And I am increasingly redneck by the day.
You know, I'm a little bit disappointed that you're not wearing your plate carrier.
So here's the thing. I almost put it on, but here in a little while, probably immediately or close to immediately after we're done, they're delivering my new mattress today. And I thought, I'm not sure that I want to go to the door wearing my full kit and scare the crap out of these poor delivery guys. So I thought, I'll better play it safe. I don't want them narking me out to the feds too early. So
I don't know, man. I think if you show up, plate carrier on, AR slung over your shoulder, I don't know.
You're like, hey guys, I might make some really good friends. It's going to go one of two ways. Either they're like, this guy's the coolest guy ever, or they're going to be like, we definitely need to call for some help from the feds.
We need some backup for the mattress delivery police.
That's right. Yes. I used to deliver furniture. That used to be my occupation. And so I've been in some kind of odd settings where I'm like, this person's weird. And so I know what it's like to be scared of someone in their house. So I'm like, I'll be nice to these guys.
Dude, I got some stories, man, of when I was a financial planner. Primarily, I would go to people's homes and do the appointments at their homes. I mean, that's just what you did back in the day. And so as I would hire guys and train them up, they would have to set up their own appointments, and I'd go out with them on their appointments. And I'd, you know, it would either be they'd watch me and how I did it, and then I'd watch them and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I was young. But whenever you hire young guys or gals, for that matter, they don't, like, the people who they set you up with are like parents of their friends. And they must have some really sketchy friends, because, like, I remember this one, I kid you not, I'm like halfway through our meeting and I'm looking around the room and there's like cat poop in various places on the ground inside the house. And I was like, I'm never coming back here. What am I doing here? Why am I wasting my time? I just need to get my stuff and go. And, you know, you live and you learn.
That's disgusting, man.
It really was.
I had a buddy, the guy I delivered furniture with a guy who had some similar stories, and like he delivered at some house where they had like pet snakes, but like large ones that they let roam free through the house. And he was one of the guys from, I can believe all your stories, but yeah, certainly some weird ones. I've gotten a couple of times where I'm delivering in a house and I'm like, this just feels creepy here.
Yeah.
like we're delivering at Buffalo Bill's house. And he's like, yeah, of course I have some furniture in my basement.
It puts the lotion in the basket.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So anyway, that's why I'm not wearing my plate carrier. But now I'm second guessing. I should have put it on. Maybe I'll put it on really fast when we're done. Because I don't look the same. It's like I'm not fully me without the plate carrier on.
I can't wait for mine to show up. I'm thinking sometime in the next 2 weeks is what I'm thinking.
It's gonna be awesome, man. You're gonna be so glad you have it too. Yeah. You're just gonna love it.
And I really I got the rescue patch that goes across the front. You know, it just makes you look like, oh, he must be official. No, not at all. Just says rescue. Yeah. I'm here to rescue me and my family, baby. That's all there is to it.
That's awesome. I think that's a wise move. That's the best one. I'm going to have to keep that in mind. Yeah. It's good stuff, man. So things going all right?
Yeah, things are going good. In fact, just want to remind everyone a couple of different things here. Number one, if you're not on our Telegraph, is it Gram? I can never keep those two. Telegram. Yes, it's Telegram. Okay.
Yeah, I've got it mixed up now too. But yeah.
If you're not on our channel, you need to get on there. How you get on there? Send the text, the keyword hero, HERO, to 850 850-990-2020, 850-990-2020. And there'll be a little something in the show notes if you miss it. Just that keyword hero. And that's going to get you on our texting list, our email list, and give you the link so you can join us on our channel. It really, to me, is like, this is the type of stuff that Dan and I would be sending back and forth to each other all day long. It's just that now everyone gets to kind of chime in and see what it is that we're sending back and forth. And there's some funny stuff in there, man. Like, I was thinking about the 3D printing. Now you can 3D print an entire AR, like every piece of it. And I was just like, this is awesome. And I'm like shopping for a 3D printer. I'm like, which one do they recommend? I'm like, I'm doing it all. I'm like, this is perfect. You can make a gun at the drop of a hat. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Gun laws are obsolete now. Like, cause it's like, what are you going to do? We can print whatever we want. So yeah, get yourself a good 3D printer, and in Minecraft sometime print up whatever you want. It's going to be really cool. So, and there's so many, downloadable files out there to make a whole lot more than just what you and I were just talking about.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's stuff to make. Oh man, effectively you can print like an entire 1911. Not that I would advise that, but you can do it. Imagine all the parts of a 1911 printed. You don't want to do that.
I'm just trying to imagine. I mean, there's a reason that's not a polymer gun.
Yes, exactly.
And I'm like, I don't know. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I'd like to use my hand in the future.
Yeah. Well, the better thing is to print like an AR lower receiver. Like that is because then you can do what you need to with that thing and make the rest of it, the gun it needs to be. But yeah, we're in some happy times, man.
I know. And with all of them trying to like really interfere with our constitutional rights, and Biden, basically saying, hey, I'm going to start doing executive orders on this, which really is meant to spend down the opposition's money because they're not. Yeah. I mean, he doesn't have the right to do it. So it's just, I'm going to get you to spend down your money. And unfortunately, in a lot of ways, Trump set the example, man, with the bump stock ban. And it's like all you guys who are out there supporting Trump blindly going, oh, Trump, so great. He's so awesome. He's the reason that Biden's going to be able to get away with a lot of stuff that he's doing. Yep. So we were saying that back then. We're like, no, this is not good.
Yeah, that was, I'm pretty sure we talked about that bump stock ban on here. Because how many people were like, well, whatever, you don't need bump stocks, they're stupid. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, I should be free to choose what I want to go on my gun. And the precedent that's set, and this is what we've always said, is you have to pay attention to the precedent that's being set, because the precedent that was set with that was a really bad one. And all these clowns claim. And
I love how Cameron, by the way, is typing in and telling us which 3D printer is a good one.
I missed that. Oh man, Cameron, you're awesome. Cameron needs a code name, by the way. He's of course anybody on the feed sees that it's him.
No, right.
But we need a good code name. Cowboy's got a code name. Leroy's got a code name. We've got to have some. Cameron, give us some suggestions later on or whenever you want to. If you got an idea for a code name, man, we'll give you one. I feel like that's part of the magic of the Freedom Nation. Like you can get an awesome code name. Yeah, which, by the way, before I forget, a faithful listener reached out, and I suppose it's okay to say his name on here because he's a faithful listener, and he sent us some information. He just started, so this is you guys. A lot of you guys have maybe heard us mention Keegan, but he just started Cardinal Tactical Firearms Training. Launched it looks like just right here in February. And so if you get the chance, check out at Cardinal Tactical 762 on Facebook. He's got a website as well, but one of the Freedom Nation, man, stepping out, making it happen, starting his training business. And so
what state's he in? What area?
Hold on. I know what it is, but I'm not looking at it right now. Hold on.
I'm thinking 762's got to be like an area code or something, right?
I was thinking we're that AK 762 by 39.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Hold on. Where's he at? So his website is cardinalfirearmtraining.com. Located in the STL area. What's the STL area?
I know both of us are like, it's kind of a big nation here.
Yeah. Hold on. I'm at the website. Oh, Missouri. That's right. Which is
nice.
important for other reasons today. High Ridge, Missouri. So check out our boy Keegan's new business, Cardinal Tactical Firearms Training. His logo is a legit cardinal, like the bird, rocking 2 Glocks with a chest protector, and a little bit of muscles going on. And I'm like, this is awesome. So check it out. You can get your CCW training from our boy Keegan. He's a faithful listener too, and thankful for you, man. Keep up the good work, my brother. So yeah, check that out.
I love it.
It's some good times.
Hey, so why don't we merge into the topic that you wanted to talk about today?
Yeah, so I think this is, and even since Missouri has already been brought up, some of you guys might have heard about the concept of Second Amendment sanctuary counties, sanctuary states, and the idea, and it gets us into a legal difficult area, but the idea is that states are passing laws that essentially say, if the federal government tries to enact anti-gun legislation, we're going to essentially say, hey, we don't stand for that, and we're going to block that enforcement here. That movement seems to be growing. We're hearing about different counties, even different states that are putting forth some kind of a law or resolution or whatever to essentially say, we're not going to stand for this. Now, there's a lot of debate when it comes down to federal government planning to do something in a particular state. It gets really tricky when the state or a county is going to try to block that. So let's just acknowledge that there are question marks legally on that. However, right now, technically, it's federally illegal to smoke marijuana. But man, we've got a lot of states that are just like, we're going to do what we want. And you get enough of that, and then it becomes impractical for the federal officers to enforce anything, or they put their focus on other things. And so it is worth kind of noting whether or not it's going to work like we want it to. I think it's worth drawing some attention to counties like, let me make sure I'm reading it right, Newton County, Missouri, who has actually passed this ordinance that's going to make it illegal within their county for a federal officer to enforce anti-gun legislation. It will put the sheriff in a position where he can arrest the federal officers. Now, theoretically, he could already do that. We had a situation with city police in, I believe, Columbus, where ATF agent wasn't properly responding, and they arrested him and they tased him, and it was this wonderful celebration for all of us. I mean, it's my early birthday present.
It was the funniest video in the world, because he goes from being a total dick to the cops to, my wife is pregnant, I'm injured, don't tase me, and it was awesome. So it was really awesome.
I still laugh just thinking about it, and people are like, "You're cruel. How can you laugh at somebody's pain?" I'm like, somebody that wicked, who by the way was harassing some woman, right? Like, trying to essentially illegally enter a home without a warrant. Yeah, I'm gonna laugh when evil gets punished. I'm gonna laugh, man. That's beautiful. So anyway, that's a whole other thing. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is I do think there's some value in following it almost from the perspective of the statement that's made by Newton County, whether or not it's quote unquote legal in any effective sense, almost doesn't matter. Now, I would argue that they have a place for it just based on the concept of sheriff kind of in antiquity, how it's meant to be used. But I think we get enough counties doing this that it sends a powerful message that might put the feds in a position where they're like, ooh, I don't want to fool with enforcing some of these laws. And so I'm bringing it up. I think we should consider it. I think we should talk about it a little bit. And I think it's worth keeping this in mind. Historically, The whole concept, and I always say it wrong, so I'm going to look it up a little bit. But the concept of posse comitatus is the old view that essentially it's power of the community, and that a community will elect a sheriff, especially think like in the Old West or even back in ancient Saxony. The king would appoint a sheriff, but he was closely tied to the community. He could call up a posse, and essentially he had a lot of power, but the power is directly tied to his relationship with the community. And so in the Old West, it was easy for a sheriff who had been elected by people who probably knew him, a sheriff who was probably also a farmer in the community, who had a lot of authority, but very little power unless he called upon the people to support him. And that's the whole concept of forming a posse. Like the sheriff is one guy, there's only so much he can do, but he could deputize a lot of people and get a job done. And the people were willing to do that because they elected him and they saw him as one of them. And so the value we have in the United States as a local sheriff is elected at a county level. You have a real say in whether or not he gets elected. Now, theoretically, elections can get rigged and all that kind of stuff, but he might be your closest say in whether or not your guns.
I'm going to have to fact check that one, by the way.
Go for it. Yeah, you should. But he might be the closest say you have. Thanks. The closest say you have in whether or not your guns get taken away. And so it's worth calling your local sheriff and saying like, hey, where do you guys stand on the issue of enforcing federal gun laws? And can I count on you to protect me against tyranny? And find out where they stand. Find out what these guys say. Maybe you're really creative in the way you ask the questions, so you don't put yourself on their radar. But you might even mention, hey, look what happened in Missouri. We'd love to see something like that. Call your county, whatever, representatives, however your county is set up, commissioners or whatever. It's worth getting some attention on this, because I think if you had some local care and concern for this, this is where we actually have some hope to see something happen. If I'm being really honest, I don't think we have legal elections at the federal level anymore. But I do have a little bit of hope that something at the local level is real. And and at the very least, my sheriff's not that far away. I can find him and have a conversation with him. Anyway, thoughts on that, Pete? I don't know. Is crazy, but are we grasping at straws to try to hold on to our freedom?
Are we grasping at straws? Of course we are. I mean, of course we are. Do I really believe that the issue of gun control, they're going to allow a sheriff or a county, for that matter, to declare themselves Second Amendment sanctuary? I don't. And, take marijuana as a great example that you brought up at the beginning of this. That was done by the state. So if you have an entire state saying, hey, we're not going to have a problem with marijuana anymore. If you want to have it, and remember, the smartest thing that the marijuana people ever did, is it started out as medicinal marijuana, right? They didn't go straight for recreational marijuana. Yep. They said, why in the world can we not use this as a medicine? So I don't know. Can we have medicinal 1911s or medicinal Glocks? I don't know. But if we could figure that argument out, we might have a much better shot. My medicinal SBR.
Oh, have you seen that meme of like the cops pulling the guy over? And he says, don't worry, officer, it's medicinal. And he's like, well, first of all,
it's fully automatic. Yeah,
it's beautiful.
But that was done by an entire state. So now you do have the issue of states' rights. One of the greatest amendments that our forefathers put in that has been essentially undone without actually repealing it is the 10th Amendment. And for those that aren't familiar with the 10th Amendment, it basically says the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Basically what it says is, if we didn't give the federal government a certain power and we didn't forbid the states from having it, then it belongs to the states or to the people. And yet it's totally ignored because the FDA, there's nothing in the Constitution that says they get to, regulate drugs or anything, but they've stamped themselves on the back and said, well, yes, we can. And maybe they did it under the Interstate Commerce Clause. I don't know. I'm not a constitutional historian. The EPA. There's nothing in the Constitution that gives them the authority to do any of that. So by the 10th Amendment, that means they don't have that authority. And when you look at the Second Amendment, what I think a lot of anti-gunners don't understand is that the Second Amendment doesn't give the people permission. It restricts the government's permission. And it says you don't have the right, government, to interfere with the people when it comes to firearms. Obviously, it says it a different way than that. But that's what's happening here. And so when we see the government basically ignoring the Constitution itself, the states allowing them to ignore it, the people allowing both the state and the feds to ignore it, that's the reason why we're in this hole that we're in, because everyone's just ignoring it. And well, this is the way it is now. The NFA should have never been passed, ever.
Yeah.
And now, how are you going to repeal the NFA after it's been in place for 80 years, 100 years, whatever it's been?
The answer is civil war.
Right. But does anybody actually want a civil war? I don't think people actually want it, except for true anarchists, which you might be one in that group. But I mean,
I don't really want a civil war, but it's starting to look pretty good these days.
Well, it's starting to look like it's going to be the only way that, I mean, really, in a lot of ways, Trump did so much damage to the country. And I would say he did a lot of damage in how we talk to each other. Mm-hmm. Like, and it's not to say that he was the first to be totally rude. Clearly, that's not the case. But he took it to a whole nother level. And now it's like neither side even wants to pretend like they can be civil with each other. That's why whenever you hear about this whole, Biden's going for unity, it's like, that's a joke, dude. He's not going for unity. Yeah. Neither side is going for unity. Both sides are going for domination. I want to dominate over you. I want to dominate over the other side.
Yeah. Well, you guys are going to make fun of me for being a nerd, but I used to use the illustration that back in the day, I would look at, you had the Cardassians in Star Trek, and they were evil, but they were so like smooth talking and slimy. And then you had the Klingons that were like, I'm going to punch you in the face right now. And I used to say, like, man, I'd much rather deal with a Klingon, right? Like, they're so blunt and whatever, but that's kind of how, and it was always the Cardassians and the Klingons that were fighting one another, right? I just realized I went to whole new nerd levels. I think my virginity just came back magically. But what I was going to say in all of this is that what we had for such a long time is that liberalism was kind of known for smooth talking while passing just wicked legislation. Right. Trump comes along and he's like a Klingon. He's boisterous and he's bludgering with his words and he's annoying and he's cruel even. But I think a lot of people were like, at least somebody's saying something, because it's like all of this wickedness was happening, but like with like smooth talk. And so now that mask is off, so to speak, and it's a wicked thing that we're seeing. But I think you're right. Like he kind of like pushed everything out into the open, and not in every way a good way.
Right.
So yeah, what a mess. But you're exactly right. We're facing a whole new mess, and a lot of it has to do with just complete ignoring, not ignorance as in lack of knowledge of, but ignorance of the 10th Amendment. Not to mention several other aspects of the Bill of Rights.
Right.
So it puts us in a weird shape. Here's what I would say. If you do get the chance, have a look at sanctuarycounties.com. And it's interesting to see what they've essentially got is a map of the United States. And anytime one of these counties puts forth some type of a resolution, I think they're probably pretty loose with what they consider a sanctuary county. But every time a county passes some resolution that's somehow pro-Second Amendment, anti-federal gun law, they make a little blip on the map showing the role that they have. And it's interesting, like this is a good chunk of the United States that is made up of these Second Amendment sanctuary counties. Now, I don't expect, as we say, that to have any legal standing. But what I do get positive on I'll just use an illustration. I have a friend who's a deputy sheriff. He's
still a friend after this podcast.
He's an interesting character. He might not know him on this podcast. But he's pretty much where we're at on pro 2A things. Before he was a deputy, he worked for a city police department. And so he was on around here, and I would assume there's a lot of counties that are similar to this. They'll have some type of a task force when the feds are going to come in and arrest somebody. They have a violent fugitive task force. And so what normally happens is you have somebody from one or more of the federal alphabet offices, and then you have somebody that's a local sheriff, somebody else that's from whatever cities. And so you have representatives from kind of every area that are on this enforcement team that arrests quote unquote violent fugitives. And they, to their credit, usually they are going after somebody who is legitimately violent to some degree, like they have a history of it or whatever. But these guys talk to each other, right? And so what ends up happening is the county guy is getting memos from, Homeland Security, and he's kind of got his ear to ground on things that are going on. Similarly, if somebody's going to get arrested, they're usually letting the sheriff know, like, hey, we're going to be doing this, such and such, can you back us up here or whatever? And so I want to say, while I'm not a big fan of all of the camaraderie between them all, there's ways in which that can play to our favor. And if I have a very pro 2A sheriff, well, then hopefully when some of these conversations happen, we know exactly where the feds are going to stand and what's going to happen. And you've got somebody saying, maybe throwing some shade on federal operations related to enforcement, or you might even get a little bit of like, when you guys really going to do that? Because you recognize that's going to create some problems in our community. Couldn't you go after this guy instead of that guy? Because, that's going to be a big headache. And this guy is also, a really bad drug dealer. Can we not? And so I'm wondering if there's a way in which we see some of the camaraderie lead to, in a pro 2A community, a pro 2A county, if you have a little bit of encouragement for things to be enforced one way or another. And so from a political perspective, I think there is an additional boundary or value in me knowing, okay, my sheriff is pro Second Amendment, and he might not have any legal say, but he has a little bit of influence as to how things get enforced.
Look at how everything's done. Everything's done by telling a story. They're not going to say, hey, we're going to go raid this guy's house because we believe he's got a bunch of ARs and AKs.
Yeah.
They're going to paint a story about how evil this guy is, how he's into kiddie porn, and he's responsible for sex trafficking. Whether or not it's true, it doesn't matter, right? They paint the story.
You're exactly
right. And then how do you go, well, we're not going to back your play because you're going to go in there because you're using the guns as the excuse to go get him. You're saying all this other stuff, but you're not going after him for all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Because you don't have enough proof for that. You're going after it for this, what you believe you know about. That's why I look at it and I go, I don't really believe that any of the sanctuary to a county stuff is going to matter at all, because who is going to defend a bad guy, whether or not he's innocent until proven guilty, right? Which is what it's all supposed to be.
Yeah. But
in the cop's eyes, everyone's guilty, period. Like that's the world they live in.
Yeah.
So,
well, and you're exactly right. And there's a whole lot of people in the 2A community who have said what's going to happen is they're going to say, we had evidence or we had reason to believe that this guy had child porn or had whatever. And that's going to be what puts you immediately as persona non grata, whether it's true or not. And I'll tell you, do you know how easy it is to put really bad stuff on your computer accidentally, especially if the police are involved? Man, it is. I mean, it's a thumb drive that they could put it on themselves at the scene, and it can be, you could get something that you think is legitimate, even emailed by the police department that you think is, and all of a sudden you've opened up a file, you've got a virus, all this stuff's been loaded on your computer. It can happen so easily. And you're exactly right. They can quote unquote make it true if they want to. And so I think I think you're right. That kind of stuff's very likely to happen. And so, as we mentioned, to some degree, we're grasping at straws with this sanctuary county thing. Of course, you recognize where this pushes us to is that the only option is going to be, civilian uprising to defend personal rights. Like that's the, like, it's like, well, we're checking off all the boxes. You know, we've tried at the national level, we've tried at the state level, we're trying now at the county level to protect our rights. I'm sure city level to some degree, although that means very little. We're going to get down to where, like, okay, we're only down to the individual level. That, like, everything has been played out, and the only thing left is to raise the black flag and slit throats, as as Leroy likes to say.
Time to spit on your hands, raise the black flag, and slit throats.
In seriousness, though, it is worth kind of just thinking through, in the same way that our founding fathers petitioned at every level. I mean, people forget that before the American Revolution, such effort was going into working out a political solution to the Stamp Act and to all these other things. You know, they didn't just get mad one day and draft the Declaration of Independence. This was after years of trying to work it out with England in a legitimate and legal way, and it just didn't work. And so here we are. We've tried at every level, and we've gone from federal to state to now we're at county, and city is kind of happening the same way. We're going to get down to, it is going to be left to only civilian individuals to defend rights, and it's just that we're getting pushed into that corner, hypothetically, in Minecraft. So
yeah, I mean, to me, it's like, that's part of the reason why the whole 3D gun thing, ghost guns, all of that, that's really, that has made it so these gun laws are totally obsolete and stupid, because you can literally print your own gun at the drop of a hat now. I mean, basically you're just buying a barrel and sticking it in there. And technically, in most states, that makes it legal, because now it can't pass through a metal detector because of the barrel. So you're good. Yeah. And I think about how much torque and pressure and everything that goes on in a gun. I don't know how you do, like, the slide that's not metal too, but whatever.
Yeah.
I don't get it, but because I haven't printed one yet being the operative word. I'd really like to get a printer and start printing some guns.
Yeah, man.
There's no doubt. But it's like, okay. And then they tried to stop the code. Oh, you can't put the code out there. Like, the fact that these states even did that was so stupid, because it was already out there. Like, once it's out there digitally, you can't ring it back in. You can't bring it back, which comes back to my blockchain forum idea. I think we still need a programmer to make the blockchain forum so it can never be deleted, and it's always out there.
Yeah. Somebody reach out to us if you can help us build something in blockchain to have a fully free social media / communications tool. We're interested. Reach out to us. We'd be willing to market it with you. We'd make you a partner probably, and we'd make this thing happen.
But I mean, I look at that stuff and it's like, okay, that's what makes all these new gun laws stupid. Like, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. It's too late.
Yeah.
It's out there. We can all make our own guns whenever we want. Drop of a hat.
Yeah. Well, and as we know, just think about them trying to enforce gun laws for the guns that are already out there. I mean, it's a headache. Now, they're counting on scaring people into turning in their guns, right? And that's why one of the things
gun guys don't really scare. So you're going to be scaring in the liberals who are already okay with giving up their guns.
Yeah. And so that's just the thing. And that's one of the things I've communicated to a lot of our pro 2A friends. I'm like, they'd have a real hard time catching you, man. So, like, don't turn them in. And if you do, it's going to be worse for you. So just don't turn them in. Like, break the law. I'm a pastor telling you that, like, this is an unjust, unbiblical law. You should not obey it, right? And so keeping that in mind, like, just think about, like, how are they going to go and get, what are we at? Something like 400 million guns right now. Are they
that
really
they know about?
They know about? Are they really going to go door to door to get these guns? And how's that going to go for them? I mean, let's say they get the veteran that is just so sick of things, and he's called up his veteran buddies who just make it hell for that those two cops that came to do the enforcement. And
I was talking to my buddy at church on Sunday about this, and he's fully of the opinion that there's no situation that the government a cop would not enforce. There's no gun law that he wouldn't enforce, and they always will. And he goes, look at it. Let's say you got a guy who's got 15 years on the job. He's 5 years away from his pension, and they tell him, hey, you got to go collect this gun over here. Do you think he's going to stand up and risk getting fired when he's 5 years away from his pension? There's no way. He's going to go collect the gun. And I completely agree. I don't trust the cops to not enforce unconstitutional laws at all. Of course they will. Yeah. Because it's about their own family first, right? Yeah, well, I'm going to get my pension. So, I'm going to go to, and besides that, I still get to have my guns, right? Because I'm a cop. Like here in California, there's no gun restrictions for cops. Yeah. There's no magazine restrictions for cops. Literally, they are the government, and they've written themselves a loophole going, we get to do whatever we want. You, the people, don't get to do anything you want. And you should be happy about it. Yeah.
Yeah. They want us to be happy. Yeah.
And if you're trying to tell me there's no reason I should have an AR, then why does the cop have an AR? There's no reason I need one. Then there's no reason he needs one either. There's no reason he needs a 30-round magazine.
Yeah. If I don't need one, he doesn't need one. Yeah. That's exactly right. Well, one of the things that's interesting, I'm reading a little bit more. The whole concept of sheriff and their role is intriguing to me, especially, honestly, as I drift into more prepper learning, to hear a little bit about the Old West, which is closer to what we can expect to be dealing with. And one of the things they talked about, and I don't expect it to look like this, but how there was the divide between law enforcement and the people was virtually non-existent. You had a sheriff that was elected by the people. Sheriff would deputize people to help them and run off marauders when needed. He would handle drunks every now and then and things like that, but you had a relatively low crime rate. And the average citizen was being deputized regularly, not regularly, but when needed. That was kind of the understanding. And so it's so different than what we have now. We're like, now it's, the police are so separated. There's essentially separate laws for them. There's a separate code of ethics for them, right? It's like, oh, I feared for my life. And so no murder charges for me. And so the divide we have between law enforcement and the citizens is so much wider than it used to be, say, back in the late 1800s. I think just not much more than 100 years ago, where people are making their way out in the West and cool things were happening. And it was like, man, our community's bounded together. And the sheriff was seen as like somebody that was doing a job you needed him to do. And he would call on you to help him get that job done. It's a whole lot different than, I get, cop gets a 30-round mag and I don't even get to have a gun. Right. And so, yeah, interesting stuff there. We are running out of time. We've talked a lot about this. Can I give a couple of like reviews, unless there's anything else you had on our whole...
Do it. Go for it, man.
Well, as some of you guys know, I've been trying to get a good second mag holder because I've been rocking around my conceal carry, my new Walther, without actually having a way to carry a second mag effectively. And I've been looking around, and if you guys know, Walther is a wonderful gun company, but they're not as prolific as Glocks, and so there's just less stuff for them. There's less accessories and all that kind of stuff. And but I did come across Blackhawk, which I know makes a lot of holsters and whatever. They're just generic single stack holster. I picked it up and I'm like, it's not like this is a life-changing purchase here. So it was like $23 or whatever. Clips either internal or external. Really, really solid clips. And it's got the way that it holds the mag is it just has this nice little spring action in it, holds it really tight and secure. And I'm just going to say, for a nominal price, this has turned out to be a really great way to carry a second mag. And so I don't know, it's under $30 for the thing. So check it out. Blackhawk makes a really nice, if you're looking for a single stack. And actually, I'm looking at this, you can probably get a double stack in there. It's just not made for it. I wouldn't be surprised if they make for a double stack as well. So really impressed with that. The other thing, you guys, is I got my new battle box this week, and I finally got myself a neck knife. out of the battle box, and I am really impressed. This little Revolt knives, and this is called a Raptor. And holy cow, it's got a ferro rod. All of the cord is like fire cord, not just regular paracord. So like basically, you give me this neck knife, I think I could just go and survive in the woods. I've got a ferro rod, I've got the knife, it's got nice little grippies on it. It looks freaking cool. It hides under my shirt. It makes me more manly. I'm just going to tell you, this is
your virginity, which you magically got back at the beginning of the podcast, you've now lost again magically.
Yeah. I mean, like, once you're this manly carrying a neck knife, I mean, what are you going to do? I got to be careful if my wife walks too close to me. She might get pregnant.
Well, I just want to know, when you preach on Sundays, do you wear the neck knife?
So I have only had it since Saturday, and I had somebody filling in for me to teach this Sunday, but I did wear it to church. I do teach with my conceal carry on. So the neck knife will probably be there. I think what I'm going to try to do, though, is make sure that, like,
what about your plate carrier? Do you preach with your plate carrier on?
Not yet, but I think that day might be coming. I mean, I don't know if you saw what happened with the pastor in Alberta, Canada, who refused. I mean, he was meeting at 50% capacity with social distancing, right? But Canada says you're only allowed to meet at 15% capacity. That's 1.5. Can you imagine? And he just kept on. And not only have they arrested him, but they've told him that a condition of his release is he has to promise not to preach. And I'm like, this is basically the book of Acts. And he's holding strong. So respect him. And his church had record attendance. They actually maxed out at fire code, right? Like, not like they're just completely defying the law. And I think it's beautiful. Or not even.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. People don't realize Canada doesn't have the Bill of Rights like we do. They don't have anything that can put them in a check. Like California was totally violating the First Amendment, freedom of religion, and until the new Supreme Court, we finally got that reversed. And then my church was like, "Oh, hey, the Supreme Court said we can meet inside, so we're going to start meeting inside." I'm like, dude, are you serious? Like, that's why we were freezing our butts off outside while we were literally feet away from a perfectly good building. Like, this is just ridiculous.
It really is. Well, I'm like, hey, government needs to stay in its lane. They don't get to tell the church how to run things under any circumstances.
They don't get to tell business how to run things under any circumstance. Well, not under any. I mean, but there are certain things that they get to tell them.
Yeah.
You can't lie, you can't steal, you can't cheat. But
that's the same thing with the church, is that in so much that I am doing what I am to do as a church within that sphere, the government has no business telling me jack, right? Now, if somebody starts doing some evil and wants to kill somebody in my church, or somebody gets raped, like, it is my job as a pastor, not to mention the government's job, to intervene and deal with that situation, because that's actually their lane, right? But telling a church how to worship is not their lane. And we don't have enough time to get me riled up enough for that, Pete. But I'm honestly embarrassed at a lot of these churches that just kind of roll over. And I'm like, it's been a year. Like, who is your God? Right? Because if you worship the God who commanded you to worship and gather together, you're not going to bow to some Caesar who tells you can't.
What's funny to me, though, and I know this isn't the podcast for this, but I do a podcast, as you know, with Peyton, who's what's called a church planner. These are guys who go out there and start churches. And so this podcast is called Church Planner Podcast. And he was talking about, for basically since the beginning, he goes, what churches don't realize is that people are going to realize the way they've been doing church basically means I don't have to show up, because it's just a big show anyway. Yep. And I can just watch it on TV, or watch it on, Facebook, or watch it on the YouTube live stream. I don't actually have to go, because it's kind of not that important, which is not the way the church was done in the book of Acts, which is what we call the first century church. This is a very, very, not necessarily new concept. I mean, it's been around for a few hundred years, but it's not the way that God intended the church to be. And so, I think we're going to see a lot of churches close up, never to reopen.
Yeah.
because they didn't realize that it wasn't about them standing up there on stage talking to people and then them all clapping and leaving.
Yeah, you're exactly right, brother. And I will tell you, like that, I would argue that most of those weren't real churches anyway. I know that sounds harsh. There are commands we have. The church is supposed to. We're supposed to bear one another's burdens, care for one another, confess sin to one another, forgive one another, meet needs for one another, break bread together. There's all these commands for the church that most of those organizations were not doing. And so, as you mentioned, they go into lockdown and put whatever they were doing on a video feed, and that seems to count because it's pretty much what they were doing anyway.
Right.
And my contention is like, you probably never were at church or hadn't been for a long time. So we're running out of time. If you want to read more on that, by the way, go to undergroundseminary.net and check our blog. I've got a couple of posts on there about that very thing Pete just talked about. And other than that, man, you guys got to check out Lake Erie Arms, man. LE Arms. We've been doing some fun stuff with cool gun sales. We still have some ammo you can buy. We got a heck ton of training, including the simulator. So I'm going to tell everybody, if you want a fun time where you will not burn ammo, but get some real training in, you need to sign up and use our simulator. I think it's $45 an hour. You can even do a group, and we'll normally have somebody in there training you. Great bang for your buck, no pun intended. Check out learms.net. If you want to come in and use our simulator, I highly recommend it, especially right now. So that's what we got, everybody.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the From Concealment podcast with Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams. Be sure to tune in next week for more gun talk. Also, check out the From Concealment website for more shooting-related goodness at FromConcealment.com.